there's a distinction made of the arahant who gains nibana before he dies, as against the arahant who gains nibana and then he's dead already. But fundamentally there's no difference. The state of nibana is just the state of nibana, and that's all. The only difference is from the worldly viewpoint that body was attached to the person, to that arahant. It's not attached now, but it was. In both cases. In the one case the body is actually still alive, in the other case the body is dead, it's gone away, burnt up. But you can't have two states of nibbana and two nibbanas. It's not like that. And I mean, if a person attains arahant, they've attained what a Buddha attained. And that was the teaching of the Buddha, to get there, do what he had done. And he told us the way, he taught it, basically. But even having taught it, we still have to work it out for ourselves, because there's only so much you can tell people in words. Words are things which deceive, but they also communicate, and we have to use them, because we haven't got any other way.
Sometimes in the Mahayana tradition, they distinguish between the Buddha and an arahant, in the sense that an arahant has realized the same nibana and is free from samsara, but in addition to that, a Buddha has the ability in each mind moment to see Paramatta Satcha and Samuti Satcha simultaneously, and ultimate truth and conventional truth in each mind moment simultaneously. And this is a key feature of a lot of the Mahayana distinctions of why they wish to become Buddhas rather than Arahants. From the forest tradition, what's your perspective on that?
Well, from what I've read and what I've seen, it looks very much as though what they call Arahant is what we call an Agami. But the thing is, there is a distinction, very definite distinction, between the ordinary person and the Buddha, or even the person who attains Arahant and the Buddha. Because the Buddha has amazing powers, and the Buddha is the sort of the pathfinder as well, whereas the ones who follow the Buddha are not. But as far as Nibbana is concerned, you can't get any distinction. I mean, you can't have sort of Nibbana of this sort and Nibbana of that sort. It just isn't like that. I mean, how can you get differences in space? Space is just space, and you can't say there's a difference in it. You can say what's in space, the objects, but the objects don't mean that the space has disappeared. It's all like that. I mean, in one place you may get the objects being a huge great palace, in the other place it's a slum. The space is not different.
So would you say the Arahant could see ultimate and conventional truth simultaneously? Could you put it that way?
He must be, yes. Because he's gone home, he's got back home, got back to his nature, his true nature. I mean, beyond this sort of state in which we exist, you get Nibbana. But what the full meaning of that is, I don't know. You have to be there to know. I mean, in one sense you can say it's one's own personal experience of returning to what one should be, with the rider that one has given up the attitude of a human being. And we talk about one doing it, but the one ceases to exist. It's very difficult really to say much about that. I mean, one can't see how there can be distinctions in nibana, because distinctions mean phenomena straight away. From what I can see, all the signs point to nibana being an absolute, being emptiness, as far as we're concerned, anyway. Empty of the world, being the true nature of each person. But when that person attains nibbana, it's like a river which flows into the ocean, and then you can't distinguish it in the ocean. There's no distinction.
In the biography of Nupumai, Ajahn Mahabua talks about the experience of Nupumai and other Ajahns of having the Buddha come to visit them, Arahants coming to visit them. How do you understand that experience?
I don't know what happens, obviously, but the interpretation I give on it is this, that the influence of the Buddha or the Arahants comes to that person. That person, because of habits, sees that influence as a human being, and possibly sees the Buddha, and the Buddha in that case would come up in the way that naturally occurs to that person to think of the Buddha, or an Arahant for that matter. See, really, we only know our senses. Our senses tell us things, and if we see an Arahant sort of floating down from the sky like that and coming and talking to us, this could very well be one's own way of interpreting it. The Arahant comes, what really comes is the influence of the Arahant on that person. And this influence, we don't know what it is. I mean, a possibility is it's the purity of mind of the person to whom the Buddha comes, and that may be the influencing factor. I don't know, there's so many things here that are difficult to interpret and quite mysterious. We can find interpretations, but one always questions and says, well, I don't know whether it's true or not.
Yesterday you told that self can be seen as cheetah with the races. How does it work? I know it works, but I don't understand how.
Self?
That self can practice against itself.
One has to remember the way the mind works, that things are coming and going very fast. And if the chitta tends to have a particular type of kilesa there, then because the chitta is changing fast, it can also bring up other things which are against that. In truth, the first chitta has already disappeared, but it's the memory of it that comes up. Memory functions to bring the idea of the first chitta up, and then the mind, so to speak, realizes that's bad, we must correct this. But underlying that also is the idea that I must correct it, which means there's also delusion there, there's a delusion of self doing it. Often when one says, I must correct my kilesas, or I must overcome this or overcome that, one uses the idea of I to do it. But what happens is quite different. By using the idea I, we bring up some theory or idea or way of thinking, and then we put that into practice. And that may be effective in overcoming the previous kilesa. But our way of interpreting what's happening is I am overcoming the kilesas. In other words, the I am overcoming the kilesas can be also a delusion. But there's no reason why one shouldn't use it. Ajahn talked about the anatta, business of anatta, and it's important to see this because many people get caught on what anatta is. He said, when one practices sila and samadhi, one should think in terms of self and self-development. When one comes to Pañña, one should see everything as being anatta. In other words, the idea of anatta is to overcome the view of atta. And he also said, when one finally breaks through and realizes what the state is, one throws out both atta and anatta. Both are chucked out. In other words, it's a wrong idea. It's fundamentally wrong. It's not so much that there is or there isn't a self. The whole idea of self is just wrong. The kilesas become weaker. That means the Dhamma is becoming stronger. And the kilesas, they crouch. They don't make themselves felt so much because they're afraid. And because of that, it frees the citta to work on Dhamma much more. But the kilesas, they're very sticky and they don't go easily. And because one has quelled the kilesas, doesn't mean that they're not there. And it doesn't mean that states one gets into because they're quelled, and because one gets very, very quiet and very calm like that, it doesn't mean that that is nibana. But it's a good state all the same. It's good. Because when the kilesas are weak, that allows one to do the practice properly. It allows one to see, to realize the nature of things.
At what point in the practice does samadhi reach a level where it no longer deteriorates?
Well, you can put it something like this. Samadhi brings a state of calm. When you do that often, the calm, so to speak, penetrates and gets into one. It's part of one's nature. Then, when it comes to that, one tends to be calm the whole time. The kilesas are not coming up easily at all. They're often seen for what they are, and one doesn't like behavior that's full of kilesas, or one doesn't like to even see or be associated with it. And that calm state is there. So there's something very firm and reliable inside. Now, when it's like that, that's the time one should start investigating. Really, that's enough samadhi mostly. Some people who are very skilled at samadhi may go on, and it would have to be jhana. They went to go on through the different stages of jhana up to nirodha. But for most people, and that means nearly everybody, it's no use trying from nirodha. One must do it by the way of wisdom. And someone who could get nirodha like Anuruddha, who knew where the Buddha was when he was when he was parinibbana. He knew what state he was in, and he knew when he died. But that's the type of citta that can get to nibbana. Just absolutely clear. Not many like that.
What are the characteristics? Like, are there like common characteristics for like a citta that can do something like that?
Yes, what?
Like, are there like for a citta that can, like cittas that can get up to nirodha samadhi, do they share common characteristics? Like sort of a woolly kind of characteristic area?
Well, the thing is, the character of that citta would, when they start to do samadhi, would turn into jhana, because that's natural to them. practice would immediately lead in that direction. Because I mean, it has the same factors. Utaka, vichara, piti, sukha, ekagata, it's there in both. But the suttas are all very lacking in describing jhana. There's only one I know that gives any good description.
How do I know that my practice is being progression?
By the results of the practice. Do you find that in yourself you feel better, you feel more confident in yourself? Do you feel more calm? Is your mind clearer? Do you find that the kilesas of like greed and hate don't come up so much? All these are indications. And what actually happens in the practice? Do you find the practice is bringing calm or not? It's the results which tell you. If after some time you find you haven't got the results, then you want to review and see why, what's wrong. At the same time, one shouldn't really be looking for results. One should do the practice with the idea of just doing the practice. And whatever results come, then one can review them afterwards. If one's looking for results and trying to get results, then one's looking at the effects and not looking at the causes. In other words, you must do the causes, the right things, to get there. Then you get there. If you think of some experience you've had perhaps, then you think, oh, I'd like to get to that experience. What was it like, and what happened in it? And you're thinking about that all the time, then you don't get there, because the mind's not doing the right thing. It's got to do the things it did to get there. When you are practicing sila and samadhi, you have to use the idea of self. And when one's practicing those things, one has to think about correcting the bad things and promoting what's good. And this is the correct way. When one goes beyond that and one comes to the state of Pañña, developing wisdom, then one tries to see the delusion. One must see the delusion and work through it. But to begin with, it's like the sharpening of the axe to cut down the tree. When the axe is blunt, it's difficult to cut down, so you sharpen it up. When it's sharp, you can cut it down easily. In the same way, when the mind is disturbed and restless, you can't start developing wisdom. It doesn't work. But once you've developed samadhi, then you can turn to it, do the work to cut down the delusion and all the rest of it. But there's no harm in looking before that even, and trying to realize where one has delusion. Well, finally one has to sort of look everywhere. One's got to sort of overturn all stones to see what's underneath. There's one thing that people always want. They want some basis, some firm basis, which they can say, that's real. That I can measure everything against. And I mean, some people take God as that. It's their firm basis. But fundamentally there is no firm basis. Everything's relative. One can't use nibana as a firm basis because one doesn't know it. And you can't really compare things with it. It's by its nature. But when one sees that there's no firm basis, it doesn't mean to say that one shouldn't have a refuge. Refuge is a practical thing. When the samadhi is developed, that'll bring a refuge within one. Pañña can be a refuge also. The seeing and realizing of things. In fact, it can bring a lot more sukha than the Samadhi. Because the sukha of Samadhi lasts while the Samadhi lasts. When you come out of it, it doesn't last for long. It's not sort of fixed there, but the sukha of Pañña is the clearing away of kilesas, and that does last.
How to overcome sexual desire?
How
to overcome sexual desire?
The direct way is the asubha practice. See the loathsomeness of bodies, dead bodies. This is the best way. One mustn't underrate sexual desire. It's very strong, and it's one of the major kilesas, if not the major kilesa, really. Raga tanha in Pali. It's very hard to overcome. But one who overcomes it attains an argument, because at an argument one doesn't come back. And it's the sexual desire that brings one back all the time to this world. The wanting of bodies, the liking of bodies, the attachment to them. This is what brings one back. So the attaining of an argument is the one that prevents one coming back, because the wanting dies away then. This is where the body practice comes in. It's very valuable. You see the nature of the body, and when you've seen it properly, the wanting of bodies won't be there. When one practices Samadhi, then one gains Samadhi, but one doesn't gain wisdom. But the Samadhi is the basis for wisdom, and you actually have to turn and practice the wisdom. You have to practice it, and you have to train yourself in wisdom to some extent like you trained in Samadhi. You can have a parikamma, a preparatory thing going on in one's mind. I mean, the ones that are given in the books are, for example, the arising of things, the falling of things, the dying away. In other words, it's dealing with anicca, impermanence. This is given in the books quite often, like Visuddhimagga. Or the other one, of course, which is given is the looking at the body, contemplating the body. And these are wisdom practices. And when one has the Samadhi strong, then one can turn and use these wisdom practices. But the Samadhi itself won't bring wisdom. And there is a slight danger that if one practices Samadhi until one gets very calm, that one gets addicted to the calm. In other words, some people, they want to stay in the calm of Samadhi all the time. They don't want to do any work. Whereas the practice of wisdom is doing the work. It's the work of getting rid of the kilesas. But one mustn't think that Samadhi will get rid of the kilesas. In fact, in other religions, there are trainings for Samadhi. But what's lacking usually is Pañña in those religions. And the practice of Samadhi doesn't bring about the Pañña. It brings about a state of calm. In other words, it brings about the stopping of thought. Whereas Pañña needs thinking. With wisdom, you've got to think.
Paul, what form does thinking take when it is actually wisdom that differentiates it from ordinary thinking?
Oh, it's like this. There's a skin here. Now, what is this skin made of? Is it pleasant? Do I get sukha from this? How long will it last? Do I think that this is me? What happens if I take the skin off? What's it like underneath? Thinking like that. And thinking about it all the time. I'm thinking, this body, where did it come from? It came from this world. It belongs to this world. It goes back to this world. Why should I think this body is mine? It belongs to the world. Thinking about that, and after a time one starts seeing it. When one sees it, the idea of the body's not me becomes stronger. It's like that, the thinking. It's got to go everywhere and think everywhere and see things. And when the wisdom is really developed, then it's a matter of wherever you look, you see wisdom. You see things with wisdom. You can see it and see what's happening. You see people act, and you know why they act like that perfectly well. They just show it up straight away. And wisdom tells you. All sorts of things, you see. Little things, I mean, you don't always talk about them, of course, but you see, oh, it's like this here, it's like that there. And they tell you things. That's the way of it. So Samadhi is really to restrict and stop the restless thinking, jumping about all over the place. Once you've stopped that, then you can turn and develop to see one-pointed, thinking in the right way. The mind, in other words, then becomes flexible and adaptable. It's no longer rigid, it's no longer sort of fickle, jumping about. Ajahn said how when he was practicing, he developed Samadhi first, and then Ajahn Man put him onto Pañña, told him he must do that. First he thought Ajahn Man was wrong, but when this wisdom developed, he realized how right he was. That the way of Samadhi is not the way. It's the preliminary attainment of a state which will help develop the Pañña.
Do you think if Nobleman hadn't told Ajahn Mahabodhi to turn and investigate the body with wisdom, that he would have discovered it on his own?
It's possible, but much more unlikely, and it may have taken him a long time. This is one of the things which is remarkable with the Buddha, how he went through all sorts of trainings, and he gained sort of right to the top of them. But when he reviewed it, he found this isn't what I'm after. He realized this isn't the way. And that's difficult, because when a person's got to the sort of like the top level of yoga or something of that sort, then they act as a teacher. That's the normal thing, but the Buddha didn't. He said, no, I'm not there yet. He could see that he wasn't there. It means that this idea, nibana, it's inherently there in people, and they all want it, but they don't recognize it. We also have the feeling in us there should be something better than this. This lot we've got at the moment, it's not what I should be. And it's because of that we always have this tanha coming up, wanting. Say, oh, maybe if I make enough money it'll be right. The person goes and makes enough money and he doesn't find it doesn't work. But he doesn't know what to do then. Unlike the Buddha, who he didn't make money, but I mean, he went, when he got to the end of something, he'd look and say, no, we try another way. And to have that realization when you don't have the path of the teaching of Buddhism there, that requires a truly developed mind like the Buddha's. Now we have it easy because we have all the teaching there. Buddha didn't have it.
At least how many hours must be practiced in daily life? Should attain something in this life?
The number of hours one should practice is very difficult to say. It depends on the karma of the person, very much. But I would say as a general rule, one's got to develop the practice till it's there all the time. I remember going to the Wat of Ajahn, and Dr. Uwe was there, and he asked Ajahn Nguyen, how long should one do a practice for? And Ajahn Nguyen looked as though he was a bit puzzled. And he just said, the whole time. When one can do it the whole time, that's when the results come.
That's the way that it explains the most of the suttas. Goes through the sequence of jhanas.
Yes, yeah. The suttas talk a lot about jhana, but the trouble is to know exactly what they mean. The thing is, they talk about jhana, but there's only one place I know where it's explained at all, and that's explained by similes. And you've got sort of the skeleton there, but you've got no bone and no flesh on it. Because of that, it's very hard to be sure exactly what it means. And I have ideas on it, but I don't want to sort of put them out because they may be wrong.
One of the ways in which the people coming to the Dhamma deteriorating.
Yes. They can, yes. Partly it's too much expectation. Partly it's not enough developing of saddha. Because saddha is very important. A lot of Westerners come to Buddhism and they sort of say, I don't want all the chanting and I don't want all the sort of puja and so on. And they go too far. They don't want it because they've turned from Christianity. And they think, Christianity is full of that. But they throw out the baby with the bathwater. And instead of doing something good, they go in the wrong direction. Fundamentally, they've got to develop things like saddha and often the chanting and things of that sort, which can help. Chanting is quite valuable as a preliminary to meditation practice. It clears the mind of a lot of stuff in the world that may have been going on. It's particularly valuable for lay people who, after they've done work and then they want to do meditation practice, they develop the chanting. The chanting takes the mind completely off the work they've been doing, and then they're more fit to do the meditation practice. I think most people who make a lot of gains at practice, they have got saddha. Saddha must be there. It's faith in the Buddha and what the Buddha teaches. A lot of people think they can do without saddha, but they can't. After all, we have to have faith that the sun's going to come up tomorrow. We have that faith, but we don't know. May not. You can't just chuck out faith altogether. The practice of buddhanusati, the contemplation of the Buddha, which is a form of the Buddha practice is a form of that, and contemplation of the Buddha is quite a good practice for developing saddha.
Tell us whenever you're ready.
Yes, it does. If you use Chintamaya Pañña a lot, it does slowly undercut to, but it's rather slow. You can't do it quickly with that. To do it quickly, it must be Bhavanamaya Pañña, which brings the realization, because the realization can come in from Chintamaya Pañña gradually, bit by bit, just by more and more thinking, because what happens is one's mode of thinking changes. and it changes into the mode of Chintamaya Pañña, whatever one's been thinking about there. But it's a bit of a slow process.